Okay, people, it's that time again. Another week, another book. Oh, yeah. The fun doesn't stop here. Okay, this week, I have my notes. This week, I'm covering Isaac Asimov, Nemesis. Oh, look at that cover. Right? Gets sold on the cover alone, right? Now, I have the old version, right? This is why when I accidentally dropped it, it's so brittle that it just snaps, right? Very sad. I have the piece over there. I don't know what to do with it. But they've reissued, I believe. I believe they've reissued this exact cover for this book. So you can go buy this brand new and it'll look just like this one if this cover you like. It's a great cover. About $8, right? Asimov's very well known sci-fi. Very well known. That's the only reason I got it. That and it was $1. You know how I do. But I've if you read, you've heard of Isaac Asimov. If you haven't, now you have. Tons of books come out of this fool. Uh, bu- 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 Rating. What did I give it? Actually, surprisingly, I don't know why I was surprised. I think for some reason, I don't know, the thickness. It's a very easy read. It just went quick. It just went very quickly. Even for me, a slow reader, I give it a 3 out of 5. This is very dry, very slow paced science fiction. I'd give it like old school, right? When you watch an old science fiction movie and they don't have money for graphics, right? They didn't have graphics in any case, even if it existed. So they like to just dialogue a lot of the concepts, right? That's what this book is. It's big, heavy concepts dialogued out. Modern science fiction will be more action orientated, right? Which it's just the market, right? New modern audiences want some action to happen. Is a planet gonna explode? Is are there aliens? What's going on, right? Very very different from this. So I can't recommend it to all readers. Right? If you're not already feeling this genre, you're not gonna be happy with this book. It might bore you a little bit, right? But if you're feeling some sci-fi, right? If that's your go-to, this is right in your wheelhouse. Very much so. And it's not terrible if it's not yours and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna risk it. Just know going in, it'll be slow paced, right? Excuse me. Just know going in, it's very slow paced. What do I mean by dry, right? Concept heavy. Um, why don't you look at your notes? Okay, so for instance, we have our settlement here, right? We got about 60,000 people living on what they call a settlement. This is supposed to be like a mock planet, right? So this is a large vessel. And we'll have dialogue about finding warp speed, right? So it doesn't just, we have warp speed, let's hit it. They get warp speed and then discuss, where should we go? What would it mean if we went there? You know, do we share this technology, right? Things like this. And our author will use various characters to hash this thing out with, right? It, it, he could just sort of write an essay. Here's what I think about these concepts, but I think it feeds better using this angle. He has a character called Janice Pitts. Now, he describes them overall, right? Like the physicality of them. He's a large man, a short man. That height, to being tall on a settlement where most people are mostly short, is a positive. This kind of thing, right? But he doesn't tell me if they're white or black or Asian or anything of this nature. He never mentions it. Side note, I will say, though, that the type of dialogue it is that book in reach? Yeah, it's sort of Japanese-ish. And I say that because I've read this book, right? 1Q84 by, what is it, Murakami? Why is this guy's name not up here? I think it's Murakami. Why are you checking it now, bro? Why didn't you check before? I think it's Murakami. In any case, we have a style here where, and I think it's something to do with sort of Japan itself, where you want to be clear, you don't want to have anything misconstrued, and they'll say, you know, we can't do that, it's cheating. And the other guy would be like, so what you're telling me is that theft is bad in your eyes because it's stealing, and that's against the law, right? We have these extra explanations, and it's very dry. It's not animated. The characters aren't yelling. We're not using massive big words. We're not over elaborating. It's trying to get very to the point, right? And he has this feel, even though he doesn't describe Asian characters, right? They're just names, essentially. It gives it a future feel, and it also helps us dig through the various concepts we're dealing with, but it does feel very Japanese. So what you're telling me is, are you saying that, and they'll re-explain it, this kind of thing. It's not annoying. So Janice Pitts, a scientist comes to him with hyperdrive technology. That it's going to let them reach an Alpha Centauri in 10 years or something like this. Right? Very fast. Dangerous. But this scientist also comes to him with what they call a new star. Right? It was hidden behind some kind of gas cloud. It's this other planet that's nearby. We can get to it in 2 years. That's the main point, is you can get to it in 2 years. Now again, even this, we go into some sort of deep sci-fi discussions on astronomy. I mean, we really get into it. It's fun. In any case, it's hidden, and in his dream is, if I can take this 60,000 people from this settlement, Rotor, to this place, and then we live there, then when everyone else discovers this technology, they'll beeline it to Alpha Centauri, and it could be 500 years, it could be 1,000 years before anyone bothers to look this way. And I will have established sort of this sterilized society. Right? And I thought it was a very cool idea. What would happen if you could establish from the ground up, sort of your own society? Everyone there is very homogenized. They all are Rotarians, right? They would all come from these stations. Education, values, all of it can be one culture instead of like Earth, where we came up with many cultures. And then the actual discussions of it, I was reading Herodotus, and in it, It's an old history. In it, there were dudes discussing how best to rule. And one would be like, dictator's the best. You have one man in charge, and things get done. And then another guy's like, yeah, but with the dictator, he always gets full of himself and does dumb stuff. So we need a Senate. And then the other guy's like, yeah, Senate's great, but they bicker too much. And then the moment they realize that they can help each other, they only help each other and they forget about the people, right? But we have this conversation, right? And it feels real in this, that someone is sitting and thinking it through and explaining it to other people and convincing them of it, that no, this is a good idea. Look at all the benefits that we would have. Right? That's what I mean by heavy concepts, right? Well, what does this concept mean? And then sort of daydream about it, and then I'm going to walk into it. Okay, the scientist that discovers the planet is called Eugenia. I like the name. She decides to call it Nemesis. Now, she had some Greek mythology reason for it, but I'm like, you call a planet Nemesis, it's going to get heavy. It kind of gets kind of heavy. But I still think it's a cool name for a planet. Nemesis. They show the planets here pretty good. There's some kind of way this is described where we have like a Jupiter type planet and like a weak sun, and between them they shed enough light on one of the moons of the Jupiter planet that makes it habitable. Right? They discover all this when they reach this other planet, this hidden planet. Right? And our guy Janus has issues with it. He doesn't want people settling on Earth. He doesn't want them thinking like Earth people. He wants them thinking like Rotarians, to live in space only. And I wonder about that, right? Like, how many generations would it take? It might not take many before people just assume normality on a spaceship, right? And I only want to live in space. And I never touch the ground. Right? I think it could happen fairly quickly. Then again, I don't see how any group of people, spacey or not, would turn down the resources available on a planet, right? You can get everything you need from space. You can break ice into water. There's all these asteroids, whatever, but it's all just sitting there on a planet. And if no one's living there, you could hack away at the planet without any regard for other people, right? That's the way I think it would go. But he had it, so these people really wanted to stay in space. They established some stuff on the planet, but it was more like a work zone where no one wanted to really be there. But I think people wouldn't be able to resist. If you found a planet people could live on, people are going to live on it. There's just no way around it. Anyway, she finds this planet and she does some calculations, and it turns out this bad boy could be heading to Earth, right, in like 5,000 years. And I'm like, I don't know what the big deal is, but she's taking it like it's a big deal. I should warn the community. And he's like, you can't warn them, they'll know where we are. To ruin my whole plan. It's a big, long discussion on this. And then I was thinking, it's like, do you owe humanity an explanation, a warning like that? If it's 5,000 years to go? Right? I mean, like Christopher Columbus, he's not given any warnings where he's going, to the people he's going to, or where he's come from. He didn't send a message back going, these savages might kill you, or whatever, right? Do you owe the people behind an explanation? If you were out as a space settler, not an explorer, right? A settler. I'm going to go live out in space. I see this asteroid that could come to Earth. Do I owe it to Earth to send that warning? I think it's kind of like ocean travel, right? You don't owe it to them, but you could incur some bad juju, right? And the bad juju when you're alone in space could be very bad. So I think on juju alone, just to give yourself some good luck rather than bad, I think you'd warn them. I think that's how it would go. I think space would be nautical, not like foot traffic. Okay, a little complicated. She marries a man named Creeley? 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 I think it's Creeley. It's kind of a weird name. He turns out to be just a spy, right? He just married her trying to get some secrets about this deep space travel, but he never got it. They end up having a kid, Marlene. But he ends up giving us sort of deep discussions on biases, prejudices, right? In their setup, there are a bunch of these settlements around Earth, and then there's Earth. And the settlements start to be homogenized, self-segregating, right? Black people only live on one, and Asians only on another, and white people only on another. Even though that sort of thing is very distasteful to Creeley, the Earthman, right? And in general, I guess society-wise, those biases shouldn't even be seen. There's a spot in here where he's offended that his boss is even noticing it almost, right? So we have a future where those sort of racisms are gone, but are coming back naturally. And I'm like, would that happen? Would we naturally be inclined to make space settlements where only people who look like us are on there? I don't know. I don't think so. If you look at human history, right, the most successful societies, I'd say, are non-homogenized. When Rome knows how to deal with other cultures. Mind you, some of the non-homogenization is slavery, right? That's unpleasant, but it's true. Arabs dealt with other races a lot. What we like is to have other groups and then say, I'm better than this group. We like that a lot, right? So I could see a very diverse group on one of these 60,000 people settlements, and then within the group, looking down on the ones who have to do, like, let's say, the grunt work. I have to fix a panel. I have to farm. Versus the intellects who are thinking up the hyperdrives and this and that. That's how I would see our prejudices would come about. I don't think at some point we're not going to care. We kind of don't care now, right? America's the strongest country on earth, and we're the most diverse. We don't really care. It comes up in spots, but on the whole, I don't think it's that big of a deal. We get other prejudices involved, right? We can always find something. We're people. We're human beings. But in this book, they make a point of saying the self-segregation is a thing that's happening. That's the author's view. I don't think it would go that route. It could. I just don't think it would happen. He's also a spy. This dude ends up being a spy. And that also is very realistic. There's no way any group of people can segregate themselves, isolate, and build on their own without other groups wanting to know what they're doing, right? Our spy networks are what they are. They'd find a way onto each settlement. I need to know what they know. If there's too many smart people, I need them on my side, eliminated, or just the information taken from them, right? So we would be sending spies in. There's no doubt about it. But we have, right, they have high security, which a settlement could have massively high security. You only let on who you want on, right? And even at 60,000, right? Even at this dome being like 3 miles across, That's not very big. It won't take long for me to know everyone on the ship, really, essentially. And new guy will stick out. Can't be helped. We cut to his daughter, and here we have, in the midst of all the hard science, a lot of space talk, concepts, um, physics, and this and that, we have the hardest, widest conceit you have to give for the book. And even that's not too deep. His daughter, Marlene, is, let's say, hyper perceptive. It's impossible to lie to this girl. She can see it on all the micro expressions on your face, on your body, right? Every little movement is just amplified to her. And it could feel sciency, right? But the way, it could feel magical. But he makes a large, strong point to not have it magical whatsoever. There's no magic in this book. And I guess the angle he's taking is sort of like a savant, right? Like a Rain Man who knows all these numbers, but only in this one particular thing. And in that sense, I think it's believable, right? It certainly doesn't ruin the story. For a good chunk of it, you're interested in what this means for this girl more than anything for the settlement, right? So it doesn't ruin it. I do think there would be some prejudice because they make a big point of this as well, of settler versus Earthman, right? People who never left Earth versus people who never leave space. Oh, something got in my eyeball. Hold on. All right, sorry about that. Something, I don't know what it was. Now I don't know if this mic's in the right spot. I'd like a piece of dust or something to just go, eyeball. I was going to die. What was I saying? Right. Prejudice. I think there would be. There's no way. Each group would like what they like about their version of existence, right? The settlers would definitely think they're better than Earth people. They complain a lot about Earth's too crowded. People are on top of you all the time. There's no privacy. And then the Earthman himself, there's endless variety. There's always stuff to do. And then he says a thing where, like, you seem to age slower physically in space because there's less gravity, constantly wearing down on you. Again, concepts that make sense. Well, another thing he doesn't cover, but it made me think about, right? Like we have 60,000 Rotarians going to this new planet, and we never sort of mention like lazy people, right? Now, what do you do if you're just small population? Now, could you eliminate it, right? If you're all on a space ship, essentially, even if it is 4 miles right wide, could you eliminate lazy people culturally? I think that's the best way to do it, right? In cultures where it's shameful to be lazy, I think you would have less lazy people, right? So in sort of like from Janice's point of view, maybe this is why he didn't bring it up. I think if you just keep all the Rotarians on that ship and everyone's born knowing they got to do certain amounts of work for the thing to survive, I don't think you'd have many lazy people. But I'm like, what would the group do? Right? Because certainly you don't have enough, right? Like if you're lazy on Earth, you just lay out. You're in California, you just lay down and it doesn't affect anyone else. I just go about my day, you do your day, and he's just lazy right there. But a lazy person on a spaceship, there's limited resources, right? There's limited space. How much space are you willing to give up for someone who's not doing anything? Do you let him starve? He can't go into the woods or in the wilderness. He can't fish for his own food. Do you force him, right? torture, pain? How do you force someone who wants to be lazy to do something? I don't know. They might just exile you, right? Which would be kind of like death. Maybe worse, because now you're just alone in space, right? Maybe just exile them? I don't know. But he doesn't cover it. But it got me thinking. What would you do? What would you do with lazy people? Right? Obviously, criminals. Execution's always possible. Prison, slave labor. Send them down to the planet, make them break rocks. What about, I didn't do anything wrong, I'm just not doing anything. I'm just sitting, being lazy. I don't know. But I think it's an issue. At least it's an issue they'd come up with. And next concept, superluminal flight. That's what they call it. He didn't call it a hyperdrive. It should be hyperdrive. It's superluminal, meaning it's faster than light. It's a great name for it. Some part of me thinks maybe they developed it just too quickly, right? Because the rotar leaves, just bugs out. Everyone watches it go, watches it not come back. Then the word spreads. They must have some kind of hyperdrive system. Now, in that kind of environment, right? I can see this. I think it's happened in history before. If there's a fervor for something, somehow the brains come up with it, right? But sometimes it's the other way. Tesla had an idea basically for like Wi-Fi, but everyone was on radio, so he sort of missed his moment in time, right? They didn't want it because they already had this other thing, even though that other thing's not better, right? So if you match sort of a sharp knife with the right moment, I can see it happened fairly quickly. In any case, they go from simple like hyperdrives to superluminal flight, which in his description can cut a 4-year trip down to like 4 minutes. Right? You just boom, boom, you're just there. And so we know as readers, I'm like, this group about to get to YOLO back over to this, and we're going to have an issue. But again, he doesn't just get us there. He sends the spy to sort of trick her into coming. She has this large ego as a scientist. We have budgets at play. She has endless budgets. She doesn't have to worry about that. But we have intense secrecy. We have discussions as to what would happen if the secret got out. You know, where we're going to go, why we're going to this. They discover the planet too. Why we're going to this planet instead of others. The whole 9 yards, right? They find out that this planet is going to come and destroy Earth. Some of them are like, bro, we can easily evacuate in time. Another one's like, I'm mad that they didn't warn me. All these kind of personal things happen. All these discussions. We even do a test flight, right? And they only make it to Jupiter, right? From Earth to Jupiter. And they spend like 5 days and a lot of discussions trying to figure out what happened. Once they figure out what happened, wondering if they should go back to Earth. Is the test done? Do we go back to Earth and say, here's this correction? Or do we go on, right? I really like the discussions in here. Now, he makes a big point of saying a lot of these scientists want credit. They do, right? But it's not this pure science community. A lot of them are for fame, for money. They're still smart. They still make breakthroughs, but they also have these human motivations. I want to be famous. I want money, right? I want to go down in the history books. And I like that he shows scientists like that. He also makes a big deal of saying that there's a psychological strain from long flights, right? This is true, right? There's one job where like a guy has to go live in this super remote northern region of Norway or something like this, right? I don't know if you've seen, there's a YouTube on it, right? He's like the loneliest man on earth or some mess like this. And it's really just way up in the Arctic. Dude's just by himself. He has a gun in case polar bears come and try and eat him. But there's nothing else. There's old abandoned buildings. There's a whole little town that used to be there. It's just abandoned. It's not like falling apart. There's no risk of him sort of dying like that. His places to stay where he's safe. There's just by himself. They just legally need someone living there for, like the claiming of oil or whatever. And they send him and they pay him. And he just sits there. But he is there and paid because so few people want to do it. And like solitary confinement's a punishment for some people. Not for everyone. So a psychological strain, yes, that would exist. But I think you could filter out the people you need for whatever the mission is. And they could handle whatever extent they need. If you need a 9-year mission where we're doing nothing but twiddling our thumbs, I think you could find some people who would be okay with it for whatever reason. Some cats are just built different, right? So I don't think that's as much of a problem as he seemed to think that it was. Beep, 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 beep. We have a concept, again, a big physics concept of they would like attach their superluminal drive to an asteroid or some large object, right? And they want to, because this thing's going to head to Earth and destroy it, right? So if we send it in a path that's close a lot of times, then the gravity of our asteroid could pull on it. And we do it enough, we have 5,000 years to do it, right? We do it enough, and it'll pull the planet off course, and everything works out, right? So a big problem in the book is easily solved. When I say easily, they didn't have this tech, right? Just they get to be alone. I think that would work, right? Physics-wise, I think. Now, we don't know, right, like how stable solar systems are, right? Because certainly asteroids come in and out. They're clearly not big enough. But if a big enough thing came, I assume, like, would they, like, scrape each other and make a mess? Or would we, like, bounce off, right? Would the interference strengthen our solar system and then it bounces off in a way? I have no idea. I also don't know if you could move a planet. I assume, like, theoretically, there's no, other than its orbit, there's nothing really holding a planet down, so to speak, right? I think you could move a planet. I don't see why not. We then come to, I think, the most interesting part of the most interesting concept. This moon, this Earth-sized moon that orbits our planet Nemesis is called Erythro? Erythro? It's a weird name, right? You can live on it. He makes a big point of like functionally living on this planet, right? It's like this red hue. The sun of the area is much closer, and it's not as bright. So you can look at it, right? He says you can look at it, but it's still beaming out all that energy. So if you're not paying attention, it'll like blind you, melt your eyes or whatever, because the energy's still coming like a sun. It just doesn't blind you, right? So I could see that being a thing, right? Like if you're unaware on this planet, you just stare at it too long, you get little blind spots. But this whole planet, there's water, there's plant life of its own, not much, but there's no other animal life. There's no fishies in the sea. There's no little rodents on the ground, no insects, no anything. There's only these, I forget the name he used, but they're a little single cell, like bacteria. That's all there is. That's all there is on this whole planet. And at first, it was making people sick, right? It would make you, like, degrade mentally. Like a stroke victim or something. But then it stopped. They have a dome on the planet. They take precautions, but it sort of just stopped affecting people. Cut to our girl Marlene with her perceptiveness, and she's drawn to the planet. We already know something's up. We're in space. Girl's drawn to a planet. What ends up happening is all the little microbacteria in all the millennia they've been alive have collectively developed a consciousness. It's almost like instead of your brain being here, it's spread as far as possible. Every molecule of it, or every cell, I would say, every tiny little microscopic cell spread out, right? So each bacteria can't think of a thought on its own. It's a little bacteria. But collectively, a trillion of them are an entity. And I'm like, hey, could you get an entity like that? I mean, it's possible, right? And then you're like, how would it react? Because in here, it wants the girl to talk to, essentially. It's a mind it can connect with and communicate with. The other ones it might not want. And when things interfere with her going down to this planet, it will like mess with your head, right? And all the connections are there. It can make you feel nauseous. It can make your legs not work. It could kill you probably if it wanted. Let me shut off the part that makes you breathe, right? So in that sense, you have a powerful entity. And then like how would you kill it? You can't kill a planet. You can't kill a planet full of sort of algae, right? Ocean will be full of it. You could zap it as much as you want. Even nukes wouldn't get rid of all the bacteria, right? And then, do you risk it? Do you risk like what? Well, that radiation could make like some kind of amphibian, right? You kickstart evolution. Now you have a real problem. And then I'm wondering, what could you have like the entity control its own evolution, right? Like here's a lizard. I'm gonna keep sending lizards up until they can start breathing. I'm gonna keep making them eat protein until they get bigger brains. Would those be like it's like avatars or something, right? Like it controls all life on the planet, and that's just how it functions. It would see each person like it's pinky. It's just a thing. That's just the way I control it. I mean, that's very cool, right? Coolest concept in the book. And well, okay, we have heavy concepts, and I'm watching the book get lose real estate, so to speak. And I'm wondering, I was almost going to get mad because I'm like, he's not going to end it, right? I'm going to run out. Now, some of this ends up being a preview to another story, right? So even this isn't part of his story. But you're like, what are you going to do? What he what he ends up doing? He's like, oh, and they all lived happily ever after. Boom, boom, boom. And you're like, is it too short? I'm like, no. Because you've spent so much time in dialogue with each of the characters, you get a sense of who they are. You also get a sense that this is sort of a momentous part of their lives, right? I don't need now to follow them into their marriage. I don't need to see the girl grow up, go to college. I don't need any of that, really. This is the key, right? And at least, again, you could make a story about those parts of their lives. But this story, this book is self-contained. It didn't need that, right? And he hits the brakes, essentially. And it doesn't hurt the story at all. You know, if you have a bad ending, it's going to hurt your rating here. So, great book. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Quick read. Go give it a shot. I'm about done. I hope between the two videos it was long enough. Ad time, right? Ad portion. Everyone's favorite part. I'm gonna review this Murakami book later. I'll save that for later. I don't want to spoil y'all, right? 2 books in one is cheating. Um, buy my books, right? You go over there. Just do it. I need subliminal messages. Is that legal? Buy my book. Buy it. Buy it. Buy it. That doesn't count. I need these. I need these to be visual. But let's be honest. I'm too lazy to edit in visual subliminal messages. Right? You're gonna buy the book. You'll buy it. If you're not, you're not. I like this kind of sci-fi. I like high concept sci-fi. It's not a problem. I'm gonna grab more Asimov if I can. Obviously. Is that long enough for the ads? Are y'all bored yet? I'm kind of bored. I'm bored of these ads. Alright, people. Good looking out.